welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. Let's talk a little bit about, we got the Twitter drama of the morning. So it's all about guns. Some Twitter thread, right? They're talking about how you can't get rid of armed police and police murders because there's too many civilian guns and there's 300 million of them and you're never going to get them all off the streets. And that's the reason the police are so deadly, is because people own guns. And there's a whole bunch of freaky bullshit that goes with this, because you're dealing with a bunch of intelligent and enlightened progressives who know better, and they know things. So, one of the things they know, of course, is that police in Europe don't go around armed. So that's completely false, of course. Progressives tend to be very provincial and blind. I've been to, 27 countries, last count. And I've seen armed police in just about every one of them. Some more obvious than others. It is true that in England, local constabulary quite often don't have obvious firearms. It is not true that the police in England are unarmed as a rule, and security around government facilities, tube stations, airports, the number of submachine guns you see is it's there, all right? Although the last time I was there, they were still into those stupid bullpup rifles. At least in the airports. Anyway, and then of course you've got France and Germany and Spain and Italy and Portugal and Greece. These people, dude, they love submachine guns. There's nothing like the fucking French for, oh my god, we have guns everywhere, as long as you're wearing the right uniform, right? Germans are pretty bad about it too. And maybe it's not obvious if you don't know what to look for, if you're not part of gun culture, if you're not military intelligence, whatever it is that I've got in my head that I can see this stuff, it's there. The disparity of force is insane, and police abuses are also insane. One of the things that you have to look at when you start to look at these numbers, especially when you're dealing with Twitter progressives, is that they never compare the numbers to other appropriate numbers. They never look at multivariable. And this is religious, okay? They have a religion. It's called science, but it's not science. But it is a religion. And part of that religion, when you're at a base level, the lay readers, okay, not the high priests, is that you don't look at things in terms of systems and multiple variables. There's always one variable you're going to isolate, and that's going to prove your point or form the simple answer. And in this case, of course, we're talking about guns. Guns are the one thing that forms the simple answer, right? Well, let's talk about that a little bit more. One of the guys talks about gun crime, gun murders, and the point of the post, I think, is that you can't disarm the police because the people are armed, which is sort of backwards. But I don't expect the philosophy to actually be something you can discuss with a progressive. So, you ask a simple question. What was the murder rate per capita? What's the homicide rate in 1750s in America? 1820s, 1870s, 1890s. Go through our history and look at the murder rate, the homicide rate per capita. Go through and look. Now, try to find data that correlates with that. Things that you can put together as causes, because guns is not it. Gun ownership doesn't seem to have any real significant effect. And then you get people who talk about, for another example, suicide, right? One guy pulls up some data from, I guess, Pew, and he's got this data set that goes from 1968 to 2017, and he pulls a number out of his butt, and that number is 2012. It's a date. And he talks about how suicides and gun crime has gone up since 2012, but oddly, accidents have gone down. He thinks it's because of a decrease in hunting. And I'm like, no. The most obvious thing, if you know anything about it, is that in the middle of the Obama era, gun schools, gun training exploded, okay? It used to be something where, you know, there was Gunsight, there was Thunder Ranch, there was one or two places you could go. Now there's, I swear, there's like I'm in a county of 20,000 people, and there's 3 places that have actual classes at the range on any given week. Difference. If you want to look for a single variable, you have to look for the appropriate variable. But you notice that he picks 2012. He picks 2012 as some sort of arbitrary number, and that's because it's the middle of a dip. It's the middle of a dip. Now, his data only goes back to 1968, so he's not really talking about anything, but he's not comparing 1996. He's not comparing 1998. He's not comparing 1978. He's specifically choosing 2012, which is really interesting. He doesn't know why it's interesting. And the reason it's interesting is 2012 is also that particular moment in time where the media started really, really twisting people's emergency switches, okay? Really getting into the amygdala and like turning it on every day, every day, every day. It's where the news cycle started getting really violent and crazy. So he doesn't know that, okay? He's a progressive. He's one of those intelligent people. So he doesn't know about this. He can't analyze this. You know, oh man, it's because we have too many guns. No, it's not because we have too many guns. And then he says something about suicides. And no, guns don't drive suicides. Guns don't even make suicides easier. Gunshot wounds are ridiculously easy to survive. It's actually kind of hard to kill yourself with a gun successfully. You have to put some planning into it. It's not just, oh, I see it on the table and I had a bad morning. My yolk broke in my eggs and there's like 5 guns sitting on the breakfast table, so I just shot myself. That's not how it works, dude. Suicide rates in America are actually surprisingly low, considering what the media, the left, the progressives, and the socialists tell you is so horrible about America. It's one of those areas where you can prove that things aren't as bad as they say. It's also one of those areas where you can look at you can see specific trends having to do with other factors, veterans issues, you know, the coronavirus issues. You can look at the data and get something out of it, but you have to be willing to see the data. So this guy, you know, this group of people on Twitter, oh, the guns, all right? Why has our homicide rate dropped by 80% in a couple of centuries? Why is it so low? You know, people, oh, it's horrible, it's awful, it's 4.8, 4.3, 4.2, and, you know, if you go to the right country, it's only 2.8. Ooh. What? You know, this is one of those things where you're talking about numbers that are so low, historically, that you really need to look at things from a different perspective. Why? I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to do something very simplistic. I'm going to say scarcity. I don't mean scarcity in the economic sense, although I do also. People work as systems. Systems are what you're looking at. It's a huge systems thing. And survival, trust, resources, security, there's a whole life stress. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes into this. So I'm going to take 15, 17, 23 variables, and I'm just going to kind of label it, that field of variables, as scarcity, all right? Scarcity or life stress. That's what's driven the homicide rate in the U.S. since our founding. This is me sipping coffee because it's a fucking mic drop, all right? Has nothing to do with guns. Has nothing to do with claw hammers, which kill more people than most rifles. All rifles combined. It has nothing to do with cars. Doesn't really have anything to do with drugs per se, although drug addictions tend to have a relationship, whether or not it's causal, with this field of variables that I'm going to label scarcity or life stress. That's what drives our homicide rate. And that's what you really, really need to look at, up and down. It's not about guns, okay? Not about guns. I don't really, unless I'm going to make this video into a 2-hour rant and do a series about what I mean by scarcity and life stress, I'm not going to really be able to say much more. It's not going to matter to anyone who's on that progressive side, because it's not a single variable, simplistic statistic that they can take to science church. It's complicated. There's no simple answer. You know, treat each other with more humanity, turn off the news, get the news off of the stupid that it's this. Probably the media is the single biggest driver we have right now of societal violence. Whether it's homicide rate or rape, doesn't really matter. Media is probably our single biggest driver right now. And even if you want to argue that with me, if you want to argue that it's the second or the fourth or not that important, that's fine. Argue, but don't tell me it's not important. Don't tell me it's of lesser importance than gun sales, because I'll laugh at you. I can show you the rates and the lag times and how it goes with reporting and what they're reporting on. Okay? The culture war really started around 2012. Think about that for a moment. And then go show me some statistics on suicides, homicides versus gun accidents. All right? Stay sideways. Remember, the goal here isn't to pick on a political side, but to get a different perspective on reality. And maybe you should stop making a fetish of guns if your concern is actually about negative effects on humanity, whether it's homicide, suicide, economics, rape, or what have you. Stop using fetishes and start looking at issues. Stay sideways.